Imagine a place where the very concept of life seems a physical error. 14 million square kilometers of white silence. An area larger than Europe, vaster than Australia. This is Antarctica. We have been taught to see it as a dead, frozen desert, a static monolith, locked in time for millions of years. We look at a map of the world and see a blank space at the bottom. But this is a lie. It is the most profound optical illusion on our planet. Beneath your feet, under a mile of snow compressed as hard as concrete, lies a land that remembers warmth. A land that saw the dinosaurs. Hidden here is a mountain range that dwarfs the Alps, yet has never been witnessed by human eyes. Rivers that defy gravity, flowing uphill under immense pressure. And lakes, locked in absolute darkness, that have not felt the warmth of the sun for 15 million years. Beginning in 2016, and in the years that followed, a cascade of new information began to surface. Satellite data, deep core drilling results, gravimetric surveys, and neutrino detectors revealed a truth that forced scientists not merely to be surprised, but to rewrite the basic principles of Earth's history. We are now faced with an undeniable fact. Antarctica was not always a world of ice, and beneath that ice hides a complex landscape, structures that someone, somehow, saw with their own eyes and charted on a map, thousands of years before the continent's official discovery. We will now breach the planet's frozen armor. We will descend into a subglacial lake, where evolution may have followed a different, alien path. We will investigate the phenomenon of ghost mountains, whose very existence contradicts the laws of geological erosion. We will explore gravitational anomalies that point to objects of colossal density, buried deep within the crust. And we will ask why the governments of the world's leading nations, the United States, Russia, China, are spending billions of dollars to drill into the most inhospitable places on Earth. What do they fear? Or what do they hope to find? This is more than geology. This is an investigation into the murder of an entire continent. A cataclysm that happened in a geological instant millions of years ago. And the evidence, flash frozen in time, is still down there. Our inquiry does not begin in a polar tent at minus 50 degrees. It begins in the dusty, quiet archives of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. In 1929, while sorting ancient manuscripts, historians happened upon a fragment of gazelle skin. Drawn upon it was a map. The date of its creation, 1513. Its author, a Turkish admiral and cartographer, Haji Muhiddin Piri ibn Haji Mehmed, known to the world as Piri Reis. At first glance, it appeared to be a typical portolan chart from the great age of discovery. The Atlantic Ocean, the coast of Africa, the recognizable outline of Brazil. But it held a detail that was utterly impossible. For there, connected to the southern tip of South America, was a coastline, a landmass of mountains and rivers where there should only have been ice. It was the coast of an Antarctica free of its frozen shroud, a world that no one in 1513 could have possibly known existed, a world that science is only now beginning to rediscover. The ice preserves more than water. It preserves questions. And in the answers, buried miles deep, may lie not just the history of a lost world, but a profound reevaluation of our own. In the 1960s, within a cartographic center of the United States Air Force in Washington, a team of experts projected an ancient map onto a modern globe. The projection was centered on Cairo, and as the image resolved, their breath caught in their throat. In the lower portion of the map, where only a void or the hypothetical undiscovered land of Terra Australis Incognita should have been, there was a coastline. It was not a guess. It was clear, detailed, traced with bays, river estuaries, mountain ranges, and islands. This was Antarctica. But it was an Antarctica without ice. The coastline of Queen Maud Land, as depicted on this map from the year 1513, perfectly matched the subglacial seismic profile obtained by a Swedish-British expedition. That data was gathered in 1949. Admiral Piri Reis, the map's creator, could not have seen this shore. It had been buried beneath a kilometer-thick sheet of ice for what was believed to be millions of years. No wooden vessel of the 16th century could have navigated those waters. In his own marginal notes, the Admiral honestly admitted it. He had not drawn this himself. He had compiled his chart from 20 older source maps, some of which, he claimed, dated back to the era of Alexander the Great, and even to the lost scrolls of the Library of Alexandria. The implication is singular and profound. Someone mapped Antarctica when it was free of ice. Someone possessed a fleet capable of braving the roaring 40s of the Southern Ocean. And most critically, they possessed geodesic instruments capable of determining longitude, a feat of precision that would elude European navigators until the invention of the marine chronometer in the 18th century. This map is a black box recovered from the wreckage of history. It proves that our knowledge of Earth's climatic cycles, or of the technological reach of ancient civilizations, is catastrophically incomplete. Either the ice entombed the continent far more recently than our models permit, or a civilization of master mariners existed on this Earth, one that we have entirely forgotten. We move now to the geometric heart of the continent, Eastern Antarctica, the coldest, driest, most inaccessible place on the planet. The surface here is a featureless, lifeless ice plateau, stretching to an empty horizon. But in 1958, a Soviet expedition, making a heroic transcontinental traverse on tracked vehicles, recorded strange, almost frightening readings from their seismic sensors. Beneath them, buried under 4 kilometers of ice, lay something gigantic. This discovery was only confirmed and detailed in the 21st century by a massive international project known as AGAP. Aircraft equipped with ice-penetrating radar, laser altimeters, and gravimeters scanned a territory the size of California, and the scientists saw a ghost. Hidden beneath the table-flat ice lies a mountain system, rivaling the European Alps in its scale and majesty. The Gamburtsev Mountains, a spine of rock 1,200 kilometers long, with peaks soaring to 3,400 meters. But the true shock was not their existence. It was their form. By the laws of classical geology, mountains this ancient, buried for eons under the crushing weight of a continental ice sheet, should be worn down, eroded into gentle, rounded hills. Instead, they are sharp, jagged, impossibly young. A geological paradox buried at the bottom of the world. A silent testament that the story of our planet, the one we were so certain we knew, may have chapters we have not yet even imagined. Beneath the crushing weight of a moving glacier, they have endured for millions of years. By all logic, they should be ground to powder. Ice is a relentless abrasive, an unstoppable grind on taintops, filling valleys and smoothing the very bones of the earth into gentle, rolling hills. The Gamburtsev Mountains, according to the official timeline, have been buried under the Antarctic ice sheet for 34 million years. They should have vanished, been utterly erased. Yet ground-penetrating radar reveals an impossible landscape. Dagger-sharp peaks, serrated ridges, and deep V-shaped valleys. The unmistakable signature of rivers, as if carved only yesterday by swift mountain streams. They appear perfectly preserved, as if the ice did not creep, but fell upon them, instantly, in one cataclysmic moment, stopping time and arresting all erosion. These are impossible structures. Geoscientists are confounded. How could these mountains survive? There is only one explanation that fits the evidence, however radical. The ice sheet must have formed with catastrophic speed. It flash froze the landscape, encasing it in a shield of cold armor, protecting it from the very forces that should have destroyed it. It is a geological Pompeii, buried not in ash, but in ice. And in the valleys of these ghost mountains, the radar sees something else. A vast, interconnected system of giant lakes and rivers, a hydraulic network of continental scale flowing under colossal pressure. We descend deeper, into a realm where the pressure reaches 400 atmospheres. Directly beneath Russia's Vostok station lies a feature that astrobiologists call Earth's inner space, Lake Vostok. This is no mere subglacial puddle. It is a gigantic freshwater sea, the size of Lake Ontario, with depths reaching 1,200 meters. It is entombed beneath 4 kilometers of solid ice, isolated from Earth's atmosphere, from sunlight, from dust, from any contact with the outside world, for a minimum of 15 and perhaps as long as 25 million years. It is a time capsule of absolute purity. When scientists began drilling toward the lake, the world held its breath. It was a race of technology and nerve, a delicate operation to pierce this ancient world without contaminating its pristine water with modern bacteria or the kerosene used to keep the borehole from freezing shut. In 2012, the drill bit finally touched the surface. Pressure from below forced a column of water up into the borehole, where it instantly froze. This core of newly formed ice was the prize. The results of its analysis were staggering. The lake's water is supersaturated with oxygen, 50 times more than in ordinary fresh water, a consequence of immense pressure and the slow melting of the glacier above. The water itself, despite surface temperatures of -80 degrees Celsius, remains liquid, warmed from below by geothermal heat. It is a perfect analog for the hidden oceans believed to exist on Jupiter's moon Europa and Saturn's moon Enceladus. But the most profound discovery was in the DNA. In the samples, scientists found the genetic traces of thermophilic bacteria, creatures that thrive in darkness and superheated water, feeding on minerals and hydrogen. But alongside them were other fragments of DNA, fragments that belonged to nothing of the sort. They were a signal from a world that was not supposed to be there, an echo from a biological mystery far deeper and far older than the ice itself. Genetic sequences that cannot be identified in any global database. Life forms that share only 86% of their DNA with any known terrestrial species. This is the dark matter of biology. Creatures that have evolved in absolute isolation for millions of years. Beneath the Antarctic ice, Lake Vostok harbors a complex, sealed ecosystem, a world about which we know almost nothing. It suggests the presence of not just bacteria, but perhaps more intricate organisms. Fungi and spectral fish, crustaceans and giant worms, all uniquely adapted to crushing pressure and superoxygenated water. We are standing on the threshold of discovering a parallel biosphere on our own planet. But the lake guards more than just biological secrets. Geophysical instruments, mounted on aircraft passing high above, have recorded a strange and powerful signal. In the southeastern part of the lake lies a massive magnetic anomaly, a presence that deviates sharply from the magnetic background of the surrounding crust. Its power, its shape, a nearly perfect oval, raises profound questions for geologists. Here, the needles of compasses and sensitive magnetometers behave erratically, spinning as if lost. What creates such a field? A colossal deposit of metal, a mountain of iron ore, or perhaps a giant meteorite that plunged into the lake before the ice sealed it shut. Some whisper of an artificial structure, a metallic object hidden on the bottom. Scientists, however, propose a more prosaic, yet no less spectacular hypothesis. A place where the Earth's crust has grown thin. The lake bed may be a rift zone, where the planet's mantle surges close to the surface. This would explain the geothermal heat that keeps the water from freezing. But the magnetic anomaly remains an enigma. It is so powerful, it influences the magnetic field of all of eastern Antarctica. It is the magnetic heart of the lake, and we do not yet know what it is made of. Our instruments cannot pierce the kilometers of ice and the depths of water with enough resolution to see. To find another clue, we must travel to the coast, to the McMurdo Dry Valleys. This is a corner of Mars that landed on Earth by mistake. For 2 million years, no snow or ice has settled here. Hurricane-force katabatic winds, screaming at speeds of over 300 kilometers per hour, scour any trace of moisture from the land. Yet here, from the tongue of the Taylor Glacier, a gruesome, viscous, blood-red torrent seeps out. It is called Blood Falls, an apocalyptic spectacle against the blinding white ice. When first discovered in 1911, explorers believed it was a bloom of red algae. But a 2017 analysis revealed a truth far more fascinating. It is oxidized iron. Rust. The water bleeds from a vast subglacial reservoir, once a saltwater bay, that was cut off from the ocean by the advancing glacier 5 million years ago. As water evaporated, the salt concentrated. Today, this brine is 3 times saltier than the sea, a salinity so extreme it cannot freeze. For eons, it has stewed in darkness, rich in iron leached from the bedrock. Now, as it trickles out and meets the air for the first time in geologic history, it rusts instantly, staining the ice in a perpetual hemorrhage of time. From a hidden biosphere in a subglacial lake to a bleeding glacier that holds a lost ocean, Antarctica reminds us that the greatest discoveries may not lie in distant galaxies. They may be waiting right here, in the dark, silent, and unknown worlds that have existed all along, just beneath our feet. Within the glacier, the temperature holds at -10 degrees Celsius. But how did iron find its way into this frozen heart? And why does the water not flow, but pulse, as if from a living vein? The answer, when it came, stunned the world of chemistry. Here, in this water, in absolute darkness and crushing cold, in a hypersaline brine devoid of oxygen, bacteria live. They do not breathe air, they respire iron. They process sulfates, consuming the ancient bedrock itself as sustenance. It is a closed ecosystem, a world unto itself, surviving solely on the chemical energy of stone. They are called lithotrophs, the rock eaters. The Blood Falls, then, is not a waterfall. It is the exhaust of a vast subterranean bioreactor. It is living proof that life will find a purchase in the most hostile corners of existence. And if bacteria can thrive inside a glacier by metabolizing iron, then life may well persist on Mars, on Pluto, in the silent abyss of deep space. Antarctica is a proving ground for astrobiology. a survival test for the universe itself. We return to the sensation of 2006, a discovery that ignited the internet and sent conspiracy theorists scrambling for passage on icebreakers. The Ellsworth Mountains. There, in satellite images from Google Earth, were objects of impossible clarity, the form of a perfect four-sided pyramid. Ideal faces, sharpened peaks. The shadow it cast fell precisely as it would from a geometrically perfect, man-made object. The height of one of these structures exceeds 1,200 meters, 10 times taller than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The world began to speak of lost Atlanteans, of alien outposts, of ancient civilizations that flourished here before the ice descended. Geologists were quick to offer a rebuttal. They called them nunataks, stark, rocky peaks piercing the surface of the glacier. Under the relentless assault of wind erosion and the endless cycle of freezing and thawing, a process known as cryogenic weathering, the rock fractures along its natural lines of weakness, forming these pyramidal shapes. The phenomenon is not unknown. The famed Matterhorn in the Alps is itself a natural pyramid. And yet, a nuance remains that gives independent researchers pause. The Antarctic pyramids are oriented to the cardinal points with a suspicious, almost engineered precision. And they do not stand haphazardly, but are arrayed in a group, as if placed in a deliberate line. Skeptics argue this is merely pareidolia, the tendency of the human mind to perceive familiar patterns in random chaos. But structural engineers, analyzing the angles of the slopes, note that such stability is unnatural for crumbling rock. Mountains typically erode chaotically, forming slopes of loose scree. What we see here is clean geometry. We do not assert that these were built by hands wielding hammers, but we do assert that the geology of Antarctica gives rise to forms that mimic artificial structures with a frightening mathematical fidelity. Perhaps it was these very natural forms that inspired the first pyramid builders in other parts of the world. A primal memory of a great white land preserved in the oldest myths of humanity. The ice of Antarctica holds more than a record of our planet's climate. It holds a record of possibility. It guards secrets of life's tenacity and geology's power to sculpt a world that defies our expectations. It is a continent that asks us not what we know, but what we are prepared to discover. Off the coast of West Antarctica, in the Amundsen Sea, a drill broke through to another time. Using the Marum Mebo 70 seafloor rig, a team of scientists extracted a core of ancient sediment, a vertical history of the planet pulled from the deep. The drill bit had ground its way through 30 meters of solid rock. But when geologists in the lab examined a layer dating back to the Cretaceous period, 90 million years ago, they saw something impossible. Not sand, not silt. They saw soil. A dark, rich forest floor. Within it, the microscopic ghosts of a lost world. Pollen, spores, and the fine fossilized latticework of plant roots. Compographic tomography scans of the sample began to reconstruct a forgotten landscape. It was not merely a forest. It was a dense, swampy tempera or Patagonia. Carbon isotope analysis revealed a world without ice. The average annual temperature in this Antarctic paradise was between 12 and 13 degrees Celsius. In the summer, it soared to 25 degrees. Warm rivers carved through the land. Flowers bloomed. Insects filled the air. And beneath the canopy of this sprawling forest, dinosaurs walked the earth. The atmosphere that sustained them was thick with carbon dioxide, at levels many times higher than our own. The discovery shattered the myth of an eternally frozen continent. Antarctica was once a green haven, but this revelation gives rise to a new and chilling question. How quickly did it all end? The sedimentary record shows the freezing was not a gradual slide into cold. It was a series of catastrophic shocks. The West Antarctic Circumpolar Current snapped shut around the continent, forming a thermal fortress, cutting it off from the world's warm waters. Temperatures plummeted. The forest died. But its remains are still there. Beneath a kilometer of ice lie the fossilized trunks of ancient trees. Entire ecosystems flash frozen in time. Ground-penetrating radar now reveals vast structures hidden below the ice sheet. Networks that resemble giant caves and tunnels carved by the flow of ancient water. These cavities could be immense and, theoretically, could still harbor their own isolated microclimates. But exploring this lost world is more than archaeology. It is a game of biological Russian roulette. From deep within the ice cores, scientists are extracting viruses. Giant viruses, dormant for 30,000 years. Pithovirus sibiricum, Mollivirus sibiricum. They slept in the permafrost and the ice. When thawed in the laboratory, they awoke, and they began to kill, retaining their infectivity across millennia. Antarctica is a colossal cryochamber, preserving a catalog of nearly every pathogen the Earth has known for millions of years. Smallpox, anthrax, the Spanish flu, and viruses of which we have no knowledge because they annihilated their hosts long before the dawn of humankind. If the ice begins to melt, and at the Thwaites Glacier it is melting with catastrophic speed, these pathogens will be released into the ocean. We do not know what they are. We carry no immunity. The ancient ice we now fracture with our drills and our warming atmosphere may not be a treasure chest, but a Pandora's box. The Great Ice Shield, a structure so vast and powerful it was impossible for humanity to build, is now being destroyed by our own hand. The consequences of this destruction could be fatal. In our search for traces of the past, we may instead find the cause of our own future extinction. In 2016, and again in 2018, an experiment known as ANITA, the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, made a discovery. A colossal balloon, launched by NASA, drifted high above the frozen continent, carrying an array of highly sensitive radio detectors. Its mission was to find neutrinos, elusive particles from deep space. Instead, it detected an event that, according to the known laws of physics, was simply impossible. A stream of high-energy particles erupted, not from the sky above, but from deep within the Earth below. Ordinarily, neutrinos rain down upon us from the cosmos. Low-energy ones can pass straight through the planet, their journey uninterrupted. But the particles ANITA detected were different. They were high-energy tau neutrinos, which possess an interaction cross-section so large they should have been stopped cold, absorbed by the dense matter of the planet's interior. The fact that they burst upward, out of the Antarctic ice, is a direct violation of the Standard Model, the very foundation of our understanding of the universe. The scientific community was stunned. It could not be true, physicists argued. It must be a sensor error, a reflection from the ice. But the data was confirmed. Hypotheses emerged. Perhaps the immense sheet of Antarctic ice acts as a giant lens, or a reflector for some unknown physical process. Or perhaps, deep in the bedrock of the continent, something is actively generating these particles. The decay of dark matter? Some bold theorists even spoke of a mirror universe existing alongside our own, where the arrow of time flows backward. This borders on science fiction. But the fact remains. Antarctica is teeming with particles that should not exist, emerging from a direction they cannot be traveling. The continent itself appears to operate as a colossal, natural particle accelerator, powered by a mechanism we do not comprehend. This is not the only secret the ice conceals. In 2006, the GRACE satellites, which map Earth's gravity field, detected a gargantuan anomaly beneath the ice of Wilkes Land in East Antarctica. A mascon, a vast concentration of mass. Buried deep beneath the surface lies an object of super-dense material, sitting at the center of a crater 500 kilometers in diameter. It is the scar left by an asteroid impact. An asteroid many times larger than the one that ended the age of dinosaurs. Scientists believe this impact occurred 250 million years ago, triggering the Permian-Triassic extinction. The Great Dying, an event so catastrophic it extinguished 96% of all life on Earth. Antarctica holds in its heart the bullet that nearly killed the planet. The crater is hidden beneath 1.5 kilometers of solid ice, but its presence may explain the cataclysm that tore the supercontinent of Gondwana apart. The impact was so violent, it could have ignited volcanic eruptions on the opposite side of the world. We walk upon the scene of the greatest crime in the history of life. And the killer, a giant stone from space, still lies buried below. Antarctica is not merely a continent of ice at the bottom of the world. It is an archive. It is the planet's hard drive containing the recorded history of millions of years of climate, catastrophe, and life. And on this drive, there are files we cannot read. Files that are protected by a password we may never know. Files with names that echo only in the silence. Pyramids. Svartalfheim. The Eastern Magnetic Anomaly. The Blood Falls. Ancient viruses locked in stasis. Streams of neutrinos passing through a continent of ice. A tropical forest buried beneath 2.5 miles of frozen water. The great gravitational scar of Wilkes Land. Individually, science struggles to offer an explanation for each. But taken together, they paint the portrait of a continent with a secret, inner life. The structures we detect are not the work of human hands. They are the artifacts of deep time, of geology, and perhaps of cataclysmic forces that may only be sleeping. The findings send a shock through the world, revealing not only our vulnerability, but our profound ignorance. We believed we had mapped our planet, yet an entire continent remains a great, white unknown. What lies beneath the ice? The answer is buried under 4 kilometers of crushing pressure. And still, we drill deeper, risking the release of something that nature intended to keep locked away. Now the climate is changing. The Thwaites Glacier, the so-called Doomsday Glacier, is fracturing at its seams. As the ice retreats, that which has been entombed for millions of years is beginning to emerge. Each year, satellite imagery reveals new riddles, exposing dark stone where once there was only eternal snow. We stand on the precipice of our greatest discoveries. Perhaps tomorrow, the ice will not reveal another mountain range, but an answer. An answer to the fundamental question of who we are and what was here before us. Antarctica keeps its silence. But it is the silence before the storm. In a warming world, the pole of cold has become the hottest point of scientific inquiry, and the most dangerous. The ice is not just melting, it is giving up its ghosts, and we may not be prepared for what they have to tell us.